first question, some of my favourite pieces are the Venetian scenes. How often have you been to Venice?
We probably go every 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
It's a city that's obviously very magical, like nowhere else. I particularly like the fact that it has no cars. And the history, of course, appeals to me enormously. So it draws us back, you know.
I really think you captured a real haunting quality of Venice. We went once in July, and it was full of people, it was quite heaving, it was really hot and quite busy. But actually in the work we've got here, I felt they're quite haunting and almost quite calming, which wasn't the side of Venice I'd seen. What is it about Venice that particularly inspires you as a city?
As I say, the history, the architecture, the water. We don't go at times of the year when it's hugely busy, although I have to say, even when it is busy, you can still find areas where it's very quiet. You know, if you go to parts of it, it's like going to any other city where it's just normal life going on.
I wanted to ask you about the Tudor portraits. It's a particular favourite era of mine from a historical perspective. I find them quite scary in some ways. I'm assuming that was kind of what you were going for with them.
Yeah.
But portraits from that time were very serious. They didn't often paint or draw people smiling. They were always quite serious. So I wanted to ask you, are the images based on drawings or paintings from that era, or are they based on illustrations from books, or were they from your imagination?
They are a combination of all of those things. So yes, portraits from that era. I'm very interested in character. I know there's not an awful lot of character work in this particular exhibition, but it is something I explore a lot. The Tudors I like particularly because it's the Renaissance, it's the change, everything is changing at that point, it's sort of right on a tipping point. And it's that really, it's that. One of the things I wanted to say about them, I suppose, is that the size of the image is a reflection of the length of the reign. So the larger images are larger reign, whereas the smallest images, which are those over there, are the shortest period of the
reign. Which is Lady Jane Grey, who reigned for 9 days?
9 days.
Yeah.
I mean, in the greater scheme of things, I intend doing the entire Kings and Queens from 1066. Not in the next year or so. It will take some time, but you know there are others that I've been working on.
I wonder how big Elizabeth I and Victoria will be. Quite a big scale.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about the technique. Chris was telling me that as much as etching is the predominant technique, you also use something called sugar lift. It's not something I'm very familiar with, so I was just interested if you could explain it a little bit.
Sugar lift is you have a metal plate with an aquatant on. An aquatant is an acid. It's a resin that's acid resistant. So if you put the entire plate into acid, it would just pit it, and when you inked it up, it would become black. A sugar lift is a sugar solution which you paint with, dry, varnish plate, and then once that's dry, soak the plate in boiling water, and where the sugar is, it lifts the varnish off. That's why it's called a sugar lift. Therefore exposing parts of the plate where you've drawn and painted. Then when you etch that, it bites into the plate and creates the tone. You know, and you etch it for different lengths of time for different depths of tone.
I know that history is a big inspiration. Are there any particular artists that have inspired you over the years?
In terms of printmaking, in terms of etching in particular, Norman Ackroyd is a big inspiration. Where do I begin? There are hundreds. You know, I love looking at art, and I think you subconsciously take in rather than think, that's my inspiration. With things like that, obviously, I'm trying to make something that's both old and modern. So I'm looking at more modern work, more poppy in a sense.
Yes, well, it works.